All right, I'd like to call the Monday, October 18th, 2021 Select Board meeting to order. For those who have been online, it appears that we were having a discussion. We do have an individual in the room who's not masked, and we're having a discussion about whether to address that or how to address the question. So that was why, if you were watching online and you saw us having a discussion, that was the discussion. We decided to open the meeting to make sure that there was no appearance that we were hiding anything. So I'm not sure what to do here. I understand that you're asking us to defer the agenda item until we can somehow have a discussion with a person that has a mask on, or you can participate remotely. What's the board's thoughts on this? Which we do.
And this is, in my opinion, not really even our issue. This is Evan's, as a municipal manager, the building and the rules that he has set in all of the municipal buildings, including the police station, libraries, etc. I mean, it's a public safety issue. So we do have multiple other options to continue to participate for members of the public, including dialing in, including over the internet. But remaining in the building, again, unless Evan is willing to give some special dispensation, I really don't see we have an option here.
I have to tell you, I did not give anybody any while they were paying their taxes. We asked for, we had people who came in the building without masks. We offered them a mask. They put it on. They left. We didn't have anybody leave until they paid their taxes.
Okay, sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave the room, and we'll have a discussion about whether or not to have the agenda item. Your presence in the mask is contrary to our public.
I'm with.
Thank.
Yep. Until I can have my lawyer, who would appear here masked for you and take care of my,
that is not that's just a request, and the select board, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, the select board will take that into consideration.
And so can you, sir, please state your name for the record so we know?
Yeah, my name is Lester A.
Okay.
And are you a landholder in that area?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good to know.
I'm actually a landholder that is going to be, either maybe adversely or maybe positively. I don't know, because if I can't participate, then I don't know. But whatever.
Just so it's clear, you can participate. You can call in.
But you're saying I have to do it by computer.
No, you can
Or put a mask on.
Lester.
Or put a mask on.
Telephone on the wall, you can do it.
Well, but that's not participating here in the meeting, and I just don't have a phone. I don't do that.
You don't have a phone?
No phone
I
at all?
haven't had a home phone since 1970.
I think we're continuing.
Okay. All right. All right. So, sir,
And
please.
I don't own a cell phone. Anybody who knows me knows I don't own a cell phone. I don't go on the computer. There's no Facebook of me or anything like that. I don't touch computers. So I rely on, if I can't be in person, I rely on a person to represent. And I tried to get hold of my person to represent me, but because.
So, sir, you've said that previously, and we're asking you to leave so that we can move the meeting forward.
Okay.
And just to be clear, since those online joined late, Evan, we do have spare masks here, so that is an option, correct?
I'm stating that I do not wear a mask.
Okay.
Okay.
I do not want a mask. So that's the way it is.
Okay, so now, I guess we'll go back to the agenda and then we'll come back to this item at the appropriate time. Are there any agenda additions or changes? Greg, I think you've got one.
Yeah, I have a couple to propose from staff. The first one, one of the one of the reading file items, 8B, about the petition to lower speed on Vermont Route 128, first section of it. The person who created the petition, Patricia Gelano, is present and able to be at the meeting, so she was hoping to speak to that. Wondering if the select board will move that to a business item. I'd suggest a new 6B after the Fleury Rd survey. Secondly, Brad Luck has had an opportunity to combine some of the agreements which you have in the packet for the agreements between the independent city of Essex Junction and town of Essex contain the latest comments from the trustees, but they did not include the comments from the select board. Brad Luck has since put together agreements for the delinquent tax agreement, the finance agreement, reappraisal, and IT that contains both comments from both boards. I don't know if that's something that you'd like to consider tonight or take a look at, but those 4 are available.
Okay, so Patricia, are you in the room here? Yep. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure you were here before we went ahead and changed the agenda. Okay, so the request is that the individual who put in the petition for lowering the speed on 128 is here, so she'd like to have an opportunity to speak and not wait until the end of the meeting to do so. So Greg's suggested we move to 6 p.m. and I would agree with that one. I have a concern about documents that have just come moments ago. Trying to include those. I mean, we had 9 documents in the packet. We got 6 more yesterday afternoon, and then apparently we've gotten another set today. If folks think about it, adding yet more to the unseen documentation that we're in the past we've said no. So I think
Well, if we're
That's
gonna be
our-
working with the trustees tomorrow night, I'd rather wait.
yeah.
We need to have a chance to look them all.
Sue, I can't hear you.
I think we need to have an opportunity to look them
Yeah,
over. I
yeah.
honestly don't even know if I'll have an opportunity, if they just came in now, to look them over before tomorrow.
Yeah, I know that's a challenge also for additionally, yeah, challenging. So what's the board want to do here? We add the 128 discussion, but not the other? Somebody make the motion?
Well, we do already have 6E for tentative agreements, so can we just discuss that as our regular?
Yeah, but we won't make it officially, the documents that just came officially part of the documentation to be reviewed in this meeting. So we still will potentially have a discussion about the agreements, but they won't include those that we haven't seen yet.
My preference would be to have a back and forth with the trustees at our joint meeting tomorrow. I think more is gained from that rather than us just talking about it and wondering what different rationales are.
Mhm.
I think it's more productive to have a back and forth.
Okay.
Or does it make sense for us to request the meeting with the trustees be moved out if they've just now?
We have another meeting next week with them.
We've
The-
already had a hard enough time scheduling meetings. There's too many of them.
And we do have other items
Other
on the
items on
agenda
tomorrow's
other than
agenda,
that,
yeah,
housing
yeah,
commission
yeah.
Yes, we do.
applications.
So maybe that's topic because we didn't have a chance to review.
Okay, so maybe I'll make the motion. I make the motion that we move reading file item 8B to business item 6B to allow the discussion of Route 28 speed limit.
Second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. So we'll add that as 6B and then renumber the rest of them. Thank you. Any other changes from board members? I guess I made the motion before asking that. I should have asked. In case anybody wanted to make minute updates. Okay, all right. So jumped in there too soon. Okay, next thing on the agenda is public to be heard. Public to be heard is a time where folks attending the meeting can address the board on issues that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak to the board, if you're in the room, you can raise your hand when we get to that point. If you're online, you can either use the raise your hand function in the Teams meeting or put a comment in the chat. If you're on the phone, and I don't currently see anybody attending on the phone, you don't need to go there. If you'd like to address the board, please be brief. Please be civil. Please refrain from using inappropriate language. All remarks should be addressed to me as the select board chair. Please do not attack other members of the public or town staff. If you are attending remotely, please keep your microphone muted. And it's also helpful if you keep your camera off if you're not speaking so that you don't add distraction to the meeting. I think that's it for public to be heard. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to speak during public to be heard? Yes, please come up to the microphone and identify yourself.
My name is Fernando A. Cook, and I live at 22 Towers Road. And I'm here for the re-survey, but the lady with the speed limit brought something to my mind. I live right in front of the entrance to Meadows Edge. And that 40-mile-an-hour speed limit is right there. When they take off from there, come down there, they're doing 50, 60 in front of that. And I've mentioned to other people before. And if that 40-mile-an-hour speed limit could be moved up the roadways, I think it'll alleviate something like happened in Underhill Center, because anybody knows that area. It's a lot of people, a lot of dogs, a lot of kids, and I'd like to see that speed limit moved. That's all I have for something that just came.
All right, thank
Thank
you. Thank you for that. Anything else from members in the room? Okay, if you are online and would like to speak, please raise your hand. Looks like there is somebody, Bob Burrows, is having difficulty joining. I don't see any hands online. All right, so we'll move on to the first business item, which is the public hearing. And this is the question where we need to, I guess, first have a discussion whether to have the public hearing because one individual who'd like to participate isn't apparently able to. So what's the...
Well, the general gist is it's a public hearing. You are welcome to attend. We have given people their options. You can hold the public hearing. We have an attorney here. You can take comments. He can either, you can continue the public hearing afterward at any time to another date. And I would ask staff, do we have a timeline restriction on this? Or is this is something that can be held over? We can have discussion and then hold off.
Somewhat for future development.
There's a current development review that's in through community development that's in process. There's some time constraints on it. This will definitely be a condition of any approval of this development. Therefore, I don't know what the time sensitivity is for that project per se, but if we do have to rewarn another public hearing, it's going to be another 30 days. Right, it's 30 days, Joe.
Go ahead, Pat.
I mean, my preference would be to continue going, understanding that we did hear from one individual who made his request. Multiple options were presented, and I'm sure he could probably submit something afterwards in writing. I mean, I realize we'll have already moved past this point, but at least that can be spoken. Maybe we put it in a future packet if there's information that he wants to give us. But at least as far as for the purposes of this public hearing, I mean, it was a religious objection of that individual's that he did not want to remain here, which is understandable if that's the case. But I think that the rules on the building have been clear for quite some time, and multiple options were given for any individual to continue to participate in this public hearing. If they choose not to avail themselves of them, that's not something we can necessarily control. So I would rather get this done tonight.
Are there implications to the fact that we asked someone to leave the room?
Well, let's have the,
I would like to bring up Mick Letty. He's our legal counsel.
Yeah.
He may have some insight on that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
Hello.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. In terms of the implications of him leaving, I don't think there are any other than he made his objection. Sounds like he asked an attorney to appear on his behalf and couldn't. He did get notice of this hearing, and this hearing is for the select board to consider whether to accept the survey and have it recorded. There's also a period of time after the survey is recorded where abutting landowners can make an objection and file an action in Superior Court if they have an issue with the survey itself. So as Evan said, I mean, the select board has a couple options. It can do a discussion tonight, suspend that for another day, or take action tonight and direct that the survey be recorded.
and as I understand it, you don't have to rewarn a meeting. You just need to recess it to another date certain.
That's right. And, the gentleman
Thanks.
was here, so he does have notice. And so he would have notice of that next time the agenda item comes up.
So with regard to the fact that he has other options, he has other recourse options to provide his input after the fact, after this public hearing, can I ask you these questions? I guess. You're
Sure.
you're employed by the town, right? Is that the?
Yes.
Okay. good.
Yes.
All right. So I can ask these questions, I think. I just want to make sure I'm not overstepping.
Just- It's
Um,
just not our normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
right.
pinch hitting for Bill Ellis tonight.
Right.
But no, that is a good question. So, I mean, the item to consider tonight is whether to accept the survey and record it. This isn't a hearing with testimony or anything like that. It's giving notice to abutting property owners of this meeting to make this decision. And so the appeal rights that abutting property owners have are per statute, and it's this 120-day period where they can bring an action in Superior Court if they have an objection to the survey itself. That's would not be a scenario that anyone would want to see happen, of course. So I would suggest taking that into consideration, but that's just one piece of it.
Go ahead, Sue.
Just for clarifying purposes, so the public hearing is on the survey, whether people have opinions on the survey.
Exactly. The landowners were given notice of this hearing tonight to voice their opinions and concerns. And the board may or may not take those into consideration when deciding to accept this survey and have it recorded.
So can we ask you for a recommendation? Is it more appropriate to what is the phrase you used? Continue the public hearing on another date rather than?
I would say being cautious would make sense
Yeah.
to continue it if there are no pressing time constraints. But I understand that there are some.
Could
Yeah.
you said earlier 30 days, but if we continue the same public hearing and do it at our next meeting, which is November 1st, would that be appropriate, or do
That-
we need to go to?
No,
this-
that would be fine because everyone already has notice.
Yep. Okay.
There just needs to be at least 30 days notice to the landowners, which
Okay.
has happened. It sounds like this gentleman had an issue with council and had some other issues. So nothing would prevent him from appearing at the next meeting to voice his concerns.
Go ahead.
So as a suggestion, we hold the hearing.
Yeah.
We let the people who are here participate. Anybody from the virtual world participate. And then you can recess or whatever the actual Vermont term is to a date certain and a time certain. And either he has counsel and they show up, or they can submit something in writing, and then you close the public hearing at that time.
Right. And at that time, the board would make the motion to accept the survey.
Right, so then we're updating the agenda, right, because we're removing item 6A.
No, we would
Well,
actually
we're
go
doing the
forward
public
with the
hearing.
public hearing
Well,
and then continue it.
We're doing
Well,
5A, but 6A.
we don't-
is-
Having it on the agenda doesn't require us to take action. So I think we leave it on there, and then it comes on another agenda later. All right, so let's see, do I need to do anything formal to open the meeting? I open the public hearing for the just to discuss the survey of the existing Class 3 town highway number 708 Fleury Road. All right, so let's go.
Yes.
Sorry, is everybody else okay with that?
Yeah.
Just wanna make sure I wasn't just jumping in. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So this public hearing is here for to approve a survey of Fleury Road. It directs staff to require any necessary deeds or documentation to establish the right of way for Fleury Road. Fleury Road is a 0.16 mile long road with a U-shaped configuration. Is located off of Towers Road, across from Clover Drive intersection. It is currently listed on the latest state highway map as Town Highway 708. Fleury Road has historically had boundaries that have not been very easy to establish. Although the road is on the state register and the state maps, it is not on the town tax map. But it has existed as a Class 3 road in the town of Essex at least since 1943. The problem currently is that there's no survey available in the land records to document the width, location of both the road and the right-of-way along Fleury Road. As per state statute, Public Works began the process of surveying the existing Class 3 town road. This public hearing is part 2 of a 2-part process for this. Back in April of this year, we had a site meeting with all of the adjoining abutters to Fleury Road. Town attorney was present. Joe Flynn, who's in the audience tonight, he was the land surveyor for Fleury Rd, was present. We reviewed this map here. After that discussion, there was a few alterations to that map, and this survey map actually reflects all of those alterations we made at that meeting. I do have to point out that this map does have one correction to make. If you look at that green strip on the lower end on 16 Towers Road lot, it does say that it's going to deed back property to Linda Fleury. That is a typo, and it should say Kim Fleury. I did have a discussion with Ms. Kim Fleury today regarding that. She can't be here tonight, but she did raise the question, and it has been addressed, so it has been taken care of. Moving forward, after the survey is approved by the select board, kind of starts a few dominoes in motion here. The first would be that the survey would be filed in the land records. our surveyor would go out and establish monuments and bounds on the road, on the right of way. A notice of completion will be sent to all of the abutting property owners along Fleury Road, at which time we would provide the language as per Title 19, Section 34, which is the notice of appeal language, which would offer them the opportunity to appeal the survey decision, the acceptance of the survey. There's 120 days after disapproval. That's the appeal period. If we do get no appeals, it will be accepted as a survey, and I would direct the town attorney to draft quitclaim deeds for all of the budding property owners that would be impacted as part of the survey. And those would be filed in the land records as well. That's about it. I have, you've met Mick Letty here. He's our legal counsel. Any legal questions? I also have Joe Flynn from Fleury Rd. He's a licensed land surveyor that did the survey for us.
Okay, thanks, Aaron.
Questions?
Any questions from the board? Go ahead, Sue.
Is a part of this process, is there any like improvements that are gonna need to be made to the road?
No. It's just formalizing the survey for the road. Because absent of a survey, I believe it's 3 rods we can claim on the road. And if you look at the map, we're only trying to set a survey for 2 rods, which is 33 feet. Versus we're trying to lessen the impact to the surrounding property owners.
I always thought it was just a driveway.
Most people do.
Any other questions?
No, I didn't have any.
You don't mind me-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Evan. Sorry.
So, Aaron, can you explain for the people at home what the history is of this right of way, why we are now the owner of it, and what its future is?
It is a class 3 road. Prior to that, the building that is, you could put the map up for me, Greg. The survey map. The building that's located in the middle of that loop road used to be the train station. One of those reaches was the drive, and the other to the train station, and then the other was the actual railroad bed for the Cambridge line that used to go through. In history, stuff got lost in between it being a railroad station, a railroad, and 1943 when it found its way onto our state maps as a class 3. What this survey does is kind of formalizes, I guess, the right of way out there. It makes it legit for any future.
And as such, any abutting land owner can have, through proper permitting, have access to that road to their property.
Correct.
And it will not be going through the former depot.
Right. I mean, as you can see, some of those lines on there, that structure is right away is right through their middle of their home.
No. So just, we have to we're formalizing it,
Yes.
and it will eventually have consequences for abutting landowners to be able to gain access to the right of way
Yes.
for our permitting process.
Yes. Which one? There's a couple property owners there. There's one property in particular that's in current development at this time in the process.
So, Aaron, the description of this road is that it's U-shaped. But we're only talking about the north leg of that U, right? The other.
Well, if you take a look at the survey, it kind of shows a 2-rod centered on the existing road, Andy.
Mhm.
And that 2-rod right away has kind of gone all the way around. So yes and no. It's still in the same location, if I'm right, Joe. That southern border of our claimed right of way, because by statute we can claim a 3-rod right of way over all of our Class 3 roads. That's just that's the law. What we're trying to do is minimize these impacts to all the property owners out there, by putting it on paper that we're declaring, and we want a 2-rod right of way over that travel. So it's going to be both the north and south, but most of the development, as you see, is on that north leg. And if you look, there's an orange kind of rectangle and then a blue piece at the end.
Yep, yep.
That's to establish a turnaround for our vehicles for plowing purposes and maintenance.
So, so the dark green is that loops around is where the right of way is?
If we declared a 3-rod right of way, yes,
Oh, okay, I see.
but we only want a 2-rod.
Okay, and so that the lower leg, the south leg of that, which is now grass, it
It is. I mean, you can see wheel track. It's
Yeah.
essentially grass. It doesn't really get used, and it hasn't been really used since I've worked here.
but you can see, and it does. I mean, you can see in this picture, it looks like there's that and
Yeah.
in reality, there is a track that, I mean, there's a but it doesn't coincide with your dark green area.
No,
That's my
that dark green part would be a portion of that 3-rod
okay,
right away.
okay.
So we're only claiming a 2 over that. So yeah, that's
Okay. So sorry, the dashed dark line shows the full width of that 3-rod right away. Okay. Gotcha. Now I understand. All right. Okay, sorry. To be clear though, I thought it said in the memo that we're only approving the north leg.
I could have phrased that a little better.
Yeah.
It's not
Okay.
so much approving, but we're formalizing everything, and I was trying to base the reasoning behind this is all the development that's taking place on the northern leg and not the southern leg. So it could have been phrased a little better.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Evan, did you have more?
And it is not inconceivable that the roadway will eventually be a loop from Towers Road, come around the former station, and come back to Towers.
In the future, that may happen, yes. As development progresses out there, there's a pretty good tract of land to the lower left corner here, which would be the southwest, that has potential to have some dense development there, residential.
And as a town road, it would be plowed
Yes,
by the town.
yes.
Just making sure everybody understands what this process is. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it'll be our right of way. It already has a piece of road on it, and ultimately it may eventually get fully paved or something like that and be an access road to all those properties.
Yes.
Okay.
So when I ask about improvement, the improvements are not part of the current plan, but could be.
They potentially in the future, and like all development in town, that is usually associated. Those improvements are usually associated with any improvement out at a certain stretch or plot of land out there. Yeah, and I would probably see that take place during some sort of approval.
Okay. Any other board questions? Board member questions? Okay, so now, given this is a public hearing, I'll open it up to the public. Start first with folks in the room. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to speak about this topic? Not seeing any hands. Anybody online wishes to speak? I don't see any hands up. And there's no one on the phone. So then, given there's no public comment, I'll accept the motion to end the public hearing.
I'm sorry, are you
Do we
gonna
need to do
end it
something
or
else?
reset?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. We did have a request to allow additional comments. So, right, we will, what's the right phrasing to use?
Yeah, you may table the discussion until the next meeting.
Okay, go ahead, Sue.
Now I'll make the motion to table this discussion on the public hearing, discuss the survey of existing Class 3 town highway 708 Fleury Road until the next meeting on November.
Hey, thank you, Sue. Do I have a second?
I think we have to specify a time, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
When is it?
Date and the time.
6:35 is our usual
And that'd be November 1st.
November 1st.
And can I make a friendly, ask that staff contact the gentleman who came tonight and have a meeting with him in
Yes.
advance?
Yes.
So that if he, for whatever reason, cannot be here in public, we have his comments.
I will reach out to Mr. Pelkey tomorrow.
Okay, so Sue, I think the change to the motion was to add 6:35 p.m.
Motion, or can we just
I think we'll be fine there. Do I have a second?
Second, Kathy does have her hand up. She indicates she has a request.
Hi there.
Yeah, hi Kathy, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's really hard to hear Sue, and I could not capture her the language she used for that motion. I'm sorry.
I'll try to speak up. I think it's my mask.
It's the mask is
Yeah.
very muffling. Yeah.
So the motion was made to table our discussion on the public hearing to discuss the survey of existing Class 3 town highway number 708 Fleury Road until our next select board meeting, November 1st at 6:35 p.m.
Thank you so much for restating.
Thank you for asking, Kathy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tracy. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we've tabled the discussion until the next meeting. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your preparation. And hopefully we'll be able to close this at our next meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, and given that we've tabled the discussion, we'll move on to the new item 6B, which is the discussion about the lower speed limit on Route 128 between Weed Road and Irene Ave. There is a memo in the reading file and a copy of the petition that was submitted. Evan or Greg, there was more discussion around that, right? What the process would be?
I believe Greg is handling this one.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and Aaron is available as well. But yeah, the town received the petition from Ms. Gelino and some residents on Vermont Route 128, Browns River, looking to have the speed reduced. They've had some accidents with pets, concerns for safety of their family members in the area. Public Works confirmed with V-Trans that V-Trans will really only consider a requested speed limit change from a municipal body, in this case, the select board, rather than residents. So staff proposes that the police can set out a speed monitoring system for about a week. Aaron is working with V-Trans to get permission to do that. If Public Works and the police feel like a further speed limit study is needed after getting some of those speeds tracked, they would do so and bring that back to the select board with a recommendation of whether or not to go ahead and request a change from V-Trans. So that's the high level overview. Aaron can can jump in if there's anything I missed, and Ms. Kellano is here, of course.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Aaron, I know you were having a side discussion there. Yeah, anything else to add to this question about the speed limit?
Sorry, I was distracted. Got me in trouble. So I have talked with my contact at District 5 VTrans. I know Greg was going to put a memo into you folks to for the speed study. I wanted to wait, so it was in a holding pattern. I can process an 1111 permit, which allows us to work in the right of way. The turnaround on that is a couple days, and we can put either the traffic sentries that PD has, or we have a couple of radar detectors as well that can go up in various locations to take a look at the speed, and we can perform another speed study as needed. The big thing that I did take away from the district is the state has a committee that meets 3 to 4 times a year on looking at changing the speed, and that may add some time to us actually changing the speed, or the state actually changing the speed out there. So that you guys need to be aware of that as well.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Aaron. Any select board questions or comments? You go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, Aaron, before you go, so just so the public is clear, I could give the explanation, but we had a really good, about 4 weeks ago, explanation of how the speeds are set. And through the speed study, that's really going to limit us on whether or not we can change the speed or make a request to change the speed limit. Because the explanation we were given then was that once the speed study is done, we basically have the proof of what a speed limit should be on a road.
Yes, you do, but it also has to pass muster, if you will, with the state. It is a state road, state highway. It's their jurisdiction. I believe it's a group of engineers that do review the documentation and the studies. So if it warrants and it meets the warrants to lower the speed limit in that section, they would recommend lowering that speed limit. If the study comes out and it doesn't meet the warrants to lower it, then they're not going to lower it.
Is part of it, Aaron, is there a certain distance you have to have? Because this is really a short section between Irene and Weed Road. It's only the 4 duplexes that are in there, maybe a house. Oh no, there's somebody outside. I didn't know if it was long enough to warrant a study, or if we need to extend the area to be studied.
What I'm going to recommend is the study, the leg going heading north from Irene towards Weed Road, and then the other side of that corner. That corner seems to be at the top of a lot of people's minds with regards to safety.
It's a launching area. Once they get around the corner, they either take off on 128 or they take off headed towards the elementary school.
Yeah.
So, my concern is maybe we should look at
as a whole,
a little bit larger area there if they are using that corner as an acceleration area.
and we would likely do both sides of that corner. If you will.
What is the speed limit of that Brown Road?
I think it's 30.
30.
It's 30 going by the
30.
elementary school.
The 30 once you get past Irene?
No.
Avenue?
I think it transitions from 40 to 30.
As you say, it goes from 40 up, and as you start up towards the elementary school, at the blinking light, it changes to 30.
So between Weed Road and Irene, it's 50. And between Irene going towards the elementary school, for some segment, it's 40. And then it drops to 30.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, any other select board questions? Any other staff comments? So Patricia, please come up and introduce yourself. And
My name is Patricia Delano, and thank you for letting me come and be a part of this. And I do speak for not only myself, but all the neighbors in my community. I did go around and take, very carefully conversations with each individual. Neighbors were pulling out of their yard. They got hit. Soon as they come around that corner, they don't do 25. They're doing more than 25. And soon as they hit where that speed limit sign right after the corner, they do 60. They're like racing down this. And then they go through, go over the bridge where Browns River is, and they go through this cornfield, and they don't stop there. They actually go through the 40 zone also at a 60, and they don't slow down until they get to the corner, which is 35, before it gets to be 30 at the school. There's a school bus zone there. There's children that live there. Now I take my grandchildren. My grandbaby gets scared to get out of the car when the cars are racing by. Our animals, our pets have been hit in that area. There's plenty of accidents. I was a part of one major accident on that corner with the garbage truck of Casella. It turned up on top of that lady's car, and I sat in the car with that lady until rescue came. And she thought she was going to die. She just seen that truck coming so fast around that corner, she didn't even have time to get out of the way. I've lived there in the area for 30 years, and I've seen so many accidents and so many careless people that come through this area. And our driveways are where our houses sit. There's only like 4 or 5 houses in that area, but that one particular area is just 50, which nobody can understand in the community, why it goes from 40 to 50 in that area, and then 25 around the corner, and then 50 again. I have spoken with the Essex police back a little while ago, and they can't understand why that section of the road is 50, especially when the driveways are only 1 car length away from our front doors, or mine is 2 cars a length from my door, and the road is right there. The houses are just too close to the road to have that speed limit being 50. My neighbors wanted to be here tonight, but they have small children. Nobody can open their windows because of the traffic speeding by there. They're doing more than 50. I had a pet that recently snuck out on me, and was mangled in the road. This person drove right over and didn't stop. And it cost me $300 to put my cat down. And the next people across the street, they did the same thing with their dog. I feel it's a very dangerous area. One of my neighbors had stated it's a death trap. We live in a death trap area. It's really scary when your kids get scared to even play out in their yard because of the cars that go by so fast. It scares them. I'm not sure, it really has to, somebody has, we welcome anybody on this board to come and sit in our yards or our driveways to experience what we're experiencing. I drive only 40 in that area. I mean, it's just too dangerous to, somebody pull in quickly out of their driveway, like the neighbor across the street from me in the other duplex. They came out of their yard, their driveway, thinking it was okay, and this car was just speeding, and they nicked their car. So now their car is sitting in their driveway, waiting to be processed for the insurance or whatnot, whatever. I just know that, there used to be monitors in that area, and they used to catch speeders all the time in that area. So I don't understand why it stopped. They'd sit in the cornfield, or they'd sit on the corner of Weed Road there, and they used to catch speeders all the time. And it's just like, I don't understand why it stopped. It's not safe to walk, do evening walks or morning walks, or bicyclists that come by or riding on that road. Even we have discussions out by the mailboxes that it's very scary for us to go up by our mailbox because people just don't care. You know, they don't care if they see a person beside the road getting their mail. They just keep going. And it needs to really be an issue for the town to, you know, consider of dropping that speed limit sign in that particular area.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. And it sounds like the staff is taking this seriously. Thank you for bringing the issue to our, did you have a question?
No.
No, I thought you were raising your hand for a question.
I'm online.
Yeah, Sunday staff is taking it seriously. We will take a look at it. We will have to work with the state. As Aaron said, there may be some because you have to schedule, you have to work to their schedule. And so we'll
So a question I do have following, you know, what I just said, how long, I mean, would it take a surveying, you know, and if the state highway doesn't feel that it needs to be lowered, what is our next step as, you know, homeowners and, you know, people that rent in that area? What do we do now? I mean, what do we do then?
yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
What I would suggest that the board do is, once we submit the study, because this study is submitted by the select board to the state. And as part of that package of that submittal, we maybe get some of your fellow neighbors along that stretch of the road to provide letters to go along with that study, so that the board that does review this at the state will take that into consideration as well.
Okay, none of them could be here because they do have small
Yeah,
children.
yeah. So when the time comes, we'll reach out to you and ask you to provide probably written comments that we can include with the report that goes to the state. I think that's excellent recommendation, Aaron. Go ahead, Sue.
Is part of the study also the volume of traffic? So, you know, do we have any, like, you know, baseline, like when the study was done before, there was X amount of cars coming along? And
That's taken into consideration, the volume of the traffic, the traveling speed, what the pace speed is, and quite honestly, how dense the population is along that stretch of road. 50 miles an hour back 30 years ago may have been sufficient out there. As development increases and as, you know, more traffic and interaction with pedestrians. I know we have the path that comes down Irene Ave and cuts across the Trowbridge Crossing. As development continues along that section, that definitely, in my opinion, would meet, at least for the state to at least consider changing the speeds out there.
So Aaron, do you have can you outlook a timeline, or is that totally dependent on the state?
The study will be pretty quick. We can get that done. Once I get the green light from you folks tonight, I can make sure I can implement those radar detectors out in the field after I get my permit. I'll talk with V-Trans tomorrow about getting that done. We could probably have them out the beginning of next week, collect their data for a week or two, and bring it back in-house, take a look at the data, write the report similar to the one on a previous road we had here recently, and then provide that to you folks so you can submit that as a formal request to the state. So next mid-month, probably mid-November.
Evan?
And then unfortunately, the second part of your question is, if the state doesn't approve it, what happens? Well, it is their road. We do have enforcement. So what we can do is I can talk with the chief as to whether we can do some more traffic enforcement out there. We get a lot of requests from a lot of different places. We cover about 39 square miles. And so we will, regardless of this, we won't do this during the speed study, because when people see police cars, they automatically slow down,
Oh,
and it will absolutely skew the data One of the things we also like to do, and you'll know this, we don't have the sign flash or speed. People, it'll be black. People think it's off or it's not working. It's working. It's just not showing your speed. Because every time you'll see it, when people see that they're going 10 over, they hit the brakes, and then when they go past it, it records a different speed than what you were actually going to do. So don't worry about that.
Okay.
It's collecting data,
Okay.
and then that's what we'll do. And but he's right. Some testimonials. The other thing is we could reach out to the school district and see if we can get a letter of support from the school district.
Okay.
Okay. I do
So
see.
this speed thing will be up within the next couple of weeks or next week or,
Within the next couple of weeks,
okay.
we'll
I just want to make sure that, I get back and I, in my community, what I can give them, because I did give them all a copy of the petition.
Just please understand, we're dealing with a state agency. They're good people, that we have a local office, but we don't know what their timelines or their priorities are.
Okay.
and it's not a committee that meets on a regular basis.
Okay.
It's more on a quarterly fashion.
We just don't
There may
wanna
be some
forgotten.
delay.
That's all I'm concerned about is we just don't, we're not gonna be forgotten.
No.
Okay. I guess that wraps up, what I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
There are a couple of hands up online. Kathy, I see your hand is up. Is that a leftover from before, or did you have another question?
Sorry, no, that's a leftover. I'll take that down.
All right.
Thanks.
I see Margaret Smith.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so first of all, I want to suggest that Sue's microphone is not working because everybody else comes through loud and clear and she just doesn't. It might be worth checking on. And second of all, I want to thank you for considering this issue. I live fairly near the elementary school, and while the speed limit may be 30, my guess is an awful lot of traffic going by the elementary school is doing 45. They, when the light changes at Route 15 and 128, they say, "Oh, goody, no stoplights between here and Milton." And they take off and they gun their engines going up that hill by the elementary school. So there doesn't seem to be any statutes on muffler sound anymore. So there's a lot of noise. And I, a number of years ago, did speak with one of the policemen about the speeding on 128. And he said, yeah, I clocked somebody going 100 up there on a motorcycle, and I'm trying to pin it on him. I'm not sure what that meant, but there, I'm sorry, the lady is right. There's never any surveillance there, either for sound or for speed limits. So I hope that we'll be able to get the state out to do something, because it's not fun and it's dangerous. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Margaret. We actually later in the agenda we'll be talking about a noise ordinance. As the discussion, yeah, they'll be doing a speed study and also following it up with some enforcement out there. Thank you for your comments. Mary Post.
Yeah, thank you. Just recently, we were out on that road and we were, you leave the elementary school, then you go all the way to where 128 makes a left, I guess. And then if you make a right, it's Weed Road. And when we came back, instead of turning right on 128 to go back towards the elementary, we had to go straight ahead for some reason to get to Route 15. And that intersection is really pretty frightening because you can't really see if you're going to go across straight ahead towards Route 15, if there's a car coming on 128, like from the elementary school, and if they're going really fast, it's pretty frightening. So I just wanted to mention that intersection too, that maybe that can kind of be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Patty Davis, you had your hand up, but it's not up now.
No, I want to say something, sure.
Oh, go ahead then.
I just wanted to say, does the town have some kind of not law, but priority to confront the engineers of the state of Vermont that public realm is not only a necessity, right? Bicyclists shouldn't be scared out of their gourd biking. My husband bikes all over and 128 and runs all over the place. And we shouldn't be afraid. I don't care if there's 5 houses on that road. The engineer.
You're breaking up, Patty. We can't hear you.
Patty, we're not hearing you.
I think we have the gist, though. Aaron, would you explain
Yeah.
how the state works?
So they have a process, and at times it's a lengthy process. They have multiple engineers that has to be looked at, different departments. I think what we've laid out here tonight is a start of something that could expand to something bigger. Moving forward, yeah, there are, government can be slow at times. We know this. But this is something that I feel we should probably expedite, and I think the board is wanting the same thing as I mean, we're going to try our best to get out there, collect the data, and get a submittal into the state for them to review as soon as we can. And then it's a waiting game at that point.
I don't know what to tell you.
How do I make it muted? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Something, my computer says mute and now I'm unmuted. All I wanted to say was the public realm. I wonder if there's any kind of law in Essex, or can the town of Essex write a letter and give it to Aaron, have Aaron give it to the state to say, okay, know everything about the state road, but they don't know everything. And people should be able to bike and run and be able to not have their dogs get killed. There must be, other than just dealing with the speed limit, some kind of policy that Essex can come up with as a town. That's one. I'm wondering if Aaron knows anything about that, because a lot of planners, they demand towns plan actually confront these engineers that work for the state to say, not just because the population is greater, that this is a priority of the town of Essex. They walk, they bike, they have pets. You should be able to go to your mailbox. You should be able to walk your dog and not be scared out of your gourd. That is not right. And I just feel there's got to be some kind of policy for Essex. And I wonder if Evan might know something.
So Patty, we spend a lot of effort trying to develop multimodal transportation options, and we install them where we can and where we can get, is there anything?
Well, the only reason I mention it is public realm has a lot to do with what you discussed earlier about right of way, and there's got to be some kind of.
Patty,
Yeah.
this discussion is specific to the Weed Road or the 128 speed limit. So if you have other comments about transportation options.
That was it. It just overall for the whole town.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know when the next committee meeting is? I would hate for, to miss it by a day or two and then have to wait another.
No. So now that I have the green light, when I discuss this with one of my counterparts over at District 5 tomorrow, when I'm applying for the permit, I will ask.
Perfect.
And he will at least get a confirmation on the time frame of when the next meeting is scheduled.
Great.
They're scheduled.
do you need anything formal from us tonight? Do we need to make a motion to ask you to go do this? Are you okay with just our consensus?
I'm okay with you saying, Aaron, go get that speed study done. Yeah. And then we would present it back to you, and we would request that you sign a letter, basically for our submittal process for the study to the state for
Right.
their,
At
for their review.
that point, we would make a motion to do that. And okay. All right.
Yep.
All right. Any other select board or staff comments? All right. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Patricia, for
Go for it, Aaron.
bringing the issue forward and for coming to speak to it. We appreciate it.
Everybody for accepting me to come and speak.
I'm very sorry to hear about your cat.
Excuse me?
I'm very sorry to hear about your cat.
I am too, because he was my best buddy. He was a good soul.
Okay, let's move on to the next business item. Consider passage of public nuisance and dog licensing and control ordinances and warning a public hearing to consider final passage. Who's going to speak to this one?
Greg, you want me to do it, or are you doing it?
I was going to turn it over to Lieutenant Kissinger. The select board saw the drafts of these ordinances about a month ago, and they're back before the board tonight. Looking at the public nuisance and dog licensing and control ordinances, I know some of the board members had some questions since then, but I would defer to Lieutenant Kissinger if he's the expert on this item.
Lieutenant, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I just had to get everything going on my end. I hopefully answered all the questions on the dog licensing, and I would ask that the board move forward with the dog licensing controlled ordinance. If there's no questions on that.
Sue, I think, did you have some? Did you get satisfactory answers to these questions?
Yes, except for the dog licensing and control, yes.
Okay. Does any board members have any other comments or questions about the dog ordinance changes?
Just to thank him for his work on these.
Okay, and so you specifically mentioned the dog ordinance. Are you then asking us not to move forward with the public nuisance one at this point?
I would request to move forward with it, but amend the noise ordinance portion. There seems to be discussion that we didn't take into account when we drafted this. So to take in those concerns, we would table that section, but put everything else moving that forward. So we have stuff in place. Specifically on the sound, it came up with people that have ranges on their property. And we did not take in consideration that this potentially be used against them if they want to shoot on their properties. So I think we need to do some more studies to enact that as far as the ranges go and how that affects them.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, the issue there is that it was at one point tried to enact a noise ordinance that there's an existing court case that established that a town can't enact a noise ordinance that impacts shooting range. And the definition of a shooting range is terribly ambiguous. And so there's additional language, I guess, that Willis added to their ordinance that addresses the question of how shooting ranges may or may not be affected by that. And I think that's what we need to go look at. Go ahead.
So since
Tracy.
I see in the recommendation that a public hearing is suggested for November 1st, since we already have a public hearing, we tabled the discussion on Fleury Road.
You could do two.
What should we do for time?
Since we have to have a specific time. Make it 7, yes, that's what I was thinking, just make it 7 o'clock.
Right.
7 will work.
Okay.
You
So
gonna do
So,
it?
so do we, Greg, I saw your hand up. She took it back down again.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that we could do the Fleury Road at 6:35 and we could warn the ordinances for 6:45. If we don't start on time, then we can postpone it a little bit, but that way it's warned for earlier and we don't have to jump around if the first public hearing goes quickly.
Okay.
All right, should we, do we need to, yeah, go ahead, go ahead. Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a question, I was just gonna move to warn a
So
public.
we haven't had any public comment yet. So
Okay.
do want to have a motion before we have the public comment? So Don, or Sue, go ahead.
Also, I uncovered a typo. Also, Lieutenant, recognized. Subsection 2, A and B.
Okay, so if that's in the public nuisance, so we're not going to address that one tonight. So yeah, send in any, if you see any additional, go ahead and put those in so we can address them before we go forward.
Send it in already.
Any public?
All right, any other board comments or questions? I see a couple hands up, but I can't tell whether they are old hands or new hands. Margaret Smith, did you want to comment? Margaret?
Her hand's not up.
Okay, put your hand down then, please. Patty Davis, did you want to comment? Or is that a residual hand from before?
I couldn't hear a word that Sue said. I hear shuffling of papers. I just wanted to point that out.
Andy, my hand was down.
Okay, sorry, it was showing as up on my screen here. My apologies. So Patty, Sue was talking about a typo that she found about the part of the public nuisance section that she's going to submit for future discussion. Yeah, it's very hard. In the room, it's hard to hear. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know.
I'm actually yelling here.
Do you have a
Yeah,
paper
yeah.
mask?
I would prefer not to wear it.
No, all right. No, that may help.
Yeah, okay. Mary Post, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just like some clarification. On the dog ordinances, I just need to know if this applies or not. I noticed on the Essex page the other day, they were talking about a German Shepherd that runs loose quite often, I guess on Old Stage or something. And someone had complained that he almost hit the dog and that the dog was actually nipping at I don't think the dog was being dangerous to somebody, but nipping at somebody's heels, running after them. And I was wondering, do the dog leash rules apply out into the country like that? I know where I live, we have to always have our dogs on a leash. And I'm worried mostly about the dog. I don't want that poor dog to get hit. But according to neighbors that were answering this thing, they were saying, oh, Boomer is out all the time running on the roads. So I just want to know if they have the same rules out there that we do in town.
Yes, they do.
Okay, so hopefully anybody listening, we could get the people that that live with Broomer to keep them safer, and then the people that are out on the road, the children. And then the second thing is it just piqued my interest, is that if now you're going to be considering shooting ranges, should there be a public hearing about that? Because there might be people that would like to talk about shooting ranges if they live close to one. It's just a thought. It's
So the public nuisance ordinance that we're considering will mention we'll have some specific factors associated with shooting ranges. So I believe, yes, people will likely want to comment on that.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yep. Patty Davis, your hand is up. It's down now. Okay. Al Bombardier.
Yes, Andy. I just had a couple of brief comments about the nuisance ordinance, the sound. And I'll try to represent a lot of the comments that I've heard in the Tanglewood, Foster Road, and Sand Hill areas as well. We are experiencing some major noise here starting as early as 5 a.m. And as late as 7:30ish, with vehicles that apparently have defective mufflers or no mufflers. And if you walked outside your house in the Foster Road area, you can hear these vehicles going down 15. It's that loud. One of the things that I noticed when I read this, I did not see any penalties in any of the ordinance, and there really ought to be some, at least attention getting penalties and for repeat offenses. The second thing I noticed was I like this 611.040, this general prohibition, because it comes back to me as a reasonable person rule. It isn't so much as decibels and length of duration as it is, if you're woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning out of a sound sleep, you're not getting any sleep at all. And these areas out here in the center are fairly high density. So that protection is really needed. Let me see, the table A that was in this, I didn't quite understand that, but I think it mostly relates to machinery than to vehicles. At least that was my impression. So those were the, oh, by the way, the exemptions that were identified in this procedure, they really appear reasonable and appropriate. So 3 main takeaways from almost everyone in this area. The sound violations has gotten people's attention. There are more density, more condos. And in the Foster Road area, you've got a lot of kids, a lot of students, bicycles, good mix of people and traffic. Second point was speeding. Speeding is every day of the week. I don't think anyone drives 25 miles an hour. It's in the 30 to 50 and even beyond that at times. And I really have not seen any police presence out here for a long time. It's sporadic, but I don't see patrols, and I very rarely see a police car out here. And finally, the 2 vehicles that we're mostly concerned about have been identified to the chief and about 6 officers that were with him when we talked to them. So there was a good public turnout to that meeting, but we're still waiting. So thank you for your time, Andy.
All right, thanks, Al. Lieutenant Kissinger, any response to any of those comments you've heard?
As far as the noise ordinance section for the sound that he was referring to, the general exemptions and the general prohibitions and the exemptions don't necessarily require a decibel reading. So we could just table section C and make the rest of the ordinance part of a warning. And then we can further visit and study section C that would be amendable to the residences of the town.
Okay, I don't have enough familiarity with the document to know what's contained in there. Pat?
I mean, I do remember that table with the decibel levels. With respect, I think, Lieutenant, I would prefer to keep the numbers in there and have a solid baseline at least. I certainly am sympathetic towards complaining about being woken up at 5 a.m. by loud noises, but it feels to me like if we want to enforce this, that we need to have some hard numbers, and that I was woken up at night, so it must be loud, probably wouldn't fly in a court of law if someone were to challenge something that we wrote. So, Lieutenant, do we have to remove those? I mean, again, my preference would be to keep the hard numbers in if we need to fall back on it.
Well, not for all the general exemptions. This is more geared towards if someone's complaining about their neighbor being loud. We would have a objective way to measure sound. A lot of complaints previously were all subjective. So theoretically, if someone didn't get along with their neighbor, they could say they're making too much noise. And then we would have to decide. This kind of gives us a guidelines on how to measure that. If someone was complaining about a neighbor being too loud or their music's too loud, we would have something that's objective. We would measure it from the complaining person's property line and get a decibel reading to see if it falls within the time period, sample time period. So this doesn't necessarily address all of the concerns that the previous resident had. Those are addressed in the general exemptions or the general provisions and exemptions. There are fines associated with this. He didn't see that part, but it starts off at $50, then it goes up to $100, all the way up to, I believe, $400 for continued violation. So there are fines associated with this ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant. Honestly, it sounds to me like that's probably more of a reason to keep it in.
Yeah.
If we want to do that though, then we need to defer because we need to address the impact it would have on shooting ranges and the risk of being sued immediately upon upon passage. So it sounds like you'd rather keep the document intact and approve it later.
Specific to that table. I thought that was what we were talking about. Removing the table or not?
So it was. He said section C. He didn't say table C. I think you said, and Lieutenant Kissinger, you said C, right?
Yeah, section C, prohibitions for non-residential uses would get rid of that. But like I said, I don't believe all the other exemptions require decibel reading.
Okay.
Because it's all things that are approved or snow removal specific.
So Greg, can you pull up the document so we can see which section that Lieutenant Kissinger is suggesting we remove?
So it's under 611.020, I think, and then it goes down to C where it says decibel. Is that what he thought? That's what he was talking about.
So you're talking about this entire section that says prohibitions for.
Correct.
It's 611.020.
Yep. Yes.
So that, no, I think you're just in the definitions, I think. It's 040, isn't it? That's just the definition there.
Yep. So it'd be 6.11.040, section C. General A is a general prohibition.
So the section above this is the reasonable person section, right? Where it would be if you know, loud noise generated by some activity, you could issue a citation, but it would remove the explicit. These are non-residential purposes, right? I guess what would be an example of that?
That would be your shooting range.
Shooting ranges, yeah.
Range. Yeah, the general prohibition addresses the previous callers about loud sound. It would be hard to get a sampling period of someone that's driving a car with no exhaust for a 15-minute period. So that's why I would ask to maybe just take out that section that could potentially cause concerns for the town and liability.
Doesn't look like you're convinced or you're understanding what the
No, maybe I'm
suggestion
just,
here is.
I guess maybe I'm just confused about, and apologies if I am, but I thought Al's comment requested removing that table. I'm not talking about the whole of section C. I believed and was arguing that keeping the decibel examples in there would be a positive thing. Non-residential users, I can think of a few complaints that I've had about certain businesses that make noises early, and if we have a decibel level that we can
Yeah.
point to, it just feels to me like that's going to be, for us as a town, easier on enforcement than, I mean, I'm sure you've heard it as well, right? You know, on the backyard early in the morning, you know, when I'm on my porch drinking coffee, I hear all sorts of noises.
Yeah.
And all sorts of noises is, you know, reasonable for one business, but for a homeowner nearby, it might not be. So keeping the table in, I feel, gives us a very specific number that we can use for cases that I know have at least come to me several times before. If I'm completely wrong and this is not about removing the table, then please just tell me to shut up.
So my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Lieutenant Kissinger, is that the suggestion is that we temporarily remove this so we can move forward with the rest of the document, because this is the section that makes it difficult, that causes the difficulty with shooting ranges. If you take this section out, then there's nothing in here that would explicitly impinge on somebody sighting in their rifle on their property within, you know.
But this will come back to us.
But it will come back. That's the intent, right? That it would come back after we address the appropriate language to not get ourselves sued over somebody's ability to shoot, but, you know, discharge a firearm on their property safely.
Yeah, and with the examples, hopefully.
So
Getting to
what
the whole.
what Lieutenant Kissinger is offering us is an option to go forward with the ordinance that would address the car noise and those sort of
Loud
things,
neighbors,
but not these explicit, the ones that require an explicit measurement of.
Yeah, as long as
Correct.
Tracy?
And I guess, Lieutenant, you may have been clear on this earlier, but it's not completely clear to me. If someone has a private range for their own use on their own property, is that a residential use or a non-residential use? Because to me, I would automatically think it's a residential use.
That would be residential, but it would still be subject to a noise complaint.
Okay, and my confusion comes from the section we're talking about. C is prohibitions for residential uses. So I just want to make sure if we're pulling out a certain section, we're pulling out the right one.
Correct. So maybe that one was not worded correctly, but I think because that has that table in there, then that's something that we would need to further look at.
So I guess the other way to look at this is if we're at risk of doing something incorrectly because we're trying to find a solution to move forward more quickly, that maybe we just defer and do the whole thing as one piece so that it's coherent and that we don't inadvertently do something that we don't intend to.
We have people waiting on some of these ordinances, though.
I know that.
The chief is also.
Yeah.
The table actually says residential, right? The first column is residential. And the first row is residential. So the table is not just referencing non-residential.
Right. So I think we need to make sure that we're being consistent and that we're doing actually what we want to do, and that it and take more time to do it right rather than try to just pull out a section and hope we don't lose some intent or do something unintended. It's I think where I'm sitting.
And Chief is also nodding.
Ah,
Oh, thanks. Can I jump in here for just a second, guys? So I don't think that taking out that section is going to do what we want it to do. I think under the general prohibition under right in the first section, I think we're going to run into issues with that if we don't address the shooting range issue. So I think what we're looking for right now is we would like to get some kind of direction as to how do we want to write that. Because what Williston has done is they came back after the lawsuit and they negotiated a settlement with the specific shooting range that's there. And they've limited that shooting range to certain days of the week that they can shoot. And then they can have different like special events and that type of thing. So I'm not saying that we need to go that direction. I'm not saying that we shouldn't go that direction. But certainly they only address that one shooting range. There are many other shooting ranges here in Essex that are private ones. And Williston doesn't currently, from my reading of their ordinance, does not allow any other shooting ranges other than that one specific one. And like I said, I don't know if we want to go down that road with this ordinance. That wasn't the intention of it at all. However, I'm also wanting to respect folks like Mr. Bombardier who need a noise ordinance. Essex has grown enough where we need a noise ordinance to be able to effectively enforce those types of violations, and having those decibel readings will allow us to do it. Unfortunately, I think we got a little bit more work to do on that before and make some decisions as to how we want to handle the shooting range issue first.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the small can of worms we got there.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, the last time we opened this subject, we had multiple hour-long meetings with many attendees.
Very full cafeteria.
Yep.
Right.
Right, because you can't enforce one noise and not another.
Do we have any idea where all the shooting ranges are that the owners could be contacted and let them have input? No.
Not officially, no.
No.
Okay.
We know where they're generally, some of them are located because we've had calls about them in the past, and of course with the hearings that we had a couple of years ago, many of the owners showed up at the hearings, and and the folks that lived next to them showed up, so that's how we knew where some of them were. But certainly there's probably some that we're not aware of, at least informal ones.
So, Chief, my understanding of that court case was that there was the concern was that you couldn't limit an existing or a shooting range that existed before a very specific date.
Correct. January 1st, 2005.
And so yeah, I guess I don't want to start a discussion right now about how to deal with that, though. So it's not been a warm discussion.
to be honest with you, that would be my concern, and my recommendation is I don't know if the select board wants to get into that at this point.
Right. Ay. And there's likely no way to have a noise ordinance that does not address shooting. With that general prohibition in there, the way that it's worded, I believe that would probably cover someone shooting next to someone's property and causing what would be considered unreasonably loud sound. That's an ambiguous term. Yep.
So it could be interpreted in a number of different ways, and certainly if somebody was shooting next door, that could be interpreted as that, in my opinion.
Yep, I agree. Yep. All right, so sounds like more thoughts required. Oh dear.
I think so, and possibly some legal opinions.
Yep.
And I apologize for the time of the select board. We honestly did not consider, shooting ranges when we were looking at this. When we were crafting this, we were using Williston as a model, and that was prior to them adding this section that they've now added for shooting ranges once their lawsuit was settled.
Right. Okay, so what's the pleasure of the board? Should we go forward with the dog licensing and control ordinance and table the public nuisance one for other discussion later?
I think so.
I'll make a motion that we warn a public hearing for the dog control and licensing proposed ordinance for November 1st, 2021 at 6:45 p.m.
Second.
So, Greg, we need to approve the ordinance also, right?
Yeah, you passed the ordinance is the language. And I can scroll up to the memo, which has it in there. Give me a moment.
So yeah, pass the dog licensing and control ordinance, and authorize staff to warn a public hearing to consider final passage of the ordinance revisions on November 1st, 2021 at 6:45 p.m.
Thank you, Tracy. And Don, you seconded
Yep.
that? Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0, so we will warn that the public hearing for the dog licensing and control ordinances for our next meeting. Thank you. All right, now, moving on to the next item, presentation of Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission annual update. And here I thought we were going to be way early, and you were going to be waiting, and we were going to be waiting for you,
Poor
Charlie.
Jeff.
Not at all. And
Oh,
can you see and hear me okay?
yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, and thank you to Jeff for being there in person. I know he's carrying all the heavy water, so yeah, feel free to call on him at any moment.
You don't have to be masked.
That's true. So thank you very much for making time on your agenda. I try to visit every year and do a customer service call and just make sure that we're providing the services to the town in the way that you expect, and looking for any feedback on how we've done that. I believe you have the report in your packet. I was just going to review it pretty quickly, and feel free to stop me or ask me any questions along the way. But the first page is really kind of background on the Regional Planning Commission and our board members, and also how we leverage municipal dues to bring in state and federal funds to the town and the region. And at the bottom were your representatives in FY21. I know there's been a couple updates for FY22, but and I do want to actually take a moment to thank Jeff for his, significant investment of time into the RPC over the years, and this year has been no exception. So thank you, Jeff, for that. And I don't know if there's anything you want to say at the outset, Jeff.
No, we're just a municipal service organization, and we have a slant towards transportation planning, energy use, and all the things that the state requires us to do. And I know there's an insatiable need out there for lots of other things that unfortunately we're not allowed to do until the state tells us that we can do it. We can't do everything, but I think what we do very well.
And we've been doing quite a bit, yeah. So on the second page has a list of and a paragraph on each of the projects that we worked on with the town last fiscal year. I'm not going to review those in any detail, but happy to take any feedback. Did those go well? Things we can improve on? Happy. Any feedback on any of those specifics, or? And I don't know, it may not be a fair question to the board, but I don't know, or Evan or Greg, if you have any feedback for us too, that would be great.
Thanks for all you do, Charlie. RPC's been great this year with ARPA, and Charlie convenes a meeting once or twice a month with all the managers in the area, so we get a chance to chat and figure out what's going on regionally, and yeah, RPC is a great resource. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
For those who don't know, several years ago, CCRPC became the host of the local managers meeting, which also includes assistant managers, where we talk about regional issues, not just planning per se, but this is probably where the genesis of the Howard Center agreement started.
That's true.
Start dealing with ARPA. You could start talking about, we've had discussions about drug treatment, not just for managers, but for the general public, where, one of the things that is difficult is UVM is the medical center. And if you take somebody into the medical center and you think they're having a mental health issue, they take a long time to either be seen or admitted or not admitted. And if they have any type of drug interaction, they tend to get released, because then they claim it's not a mental health issue, or they can't deal with both at the same time. So CCRPC is a really good clearinghouse of local issues that, as many of us can attest, for a community to take on a big issue, it's too daunting. But if we do it as the Chittenden region, and we're all working in the same direction, we get a lot more traction and we get a lot more buy-in, and we have a bigger voice. So between Charlie and all those others, it's really a great resource for not only us, but our partners in the region.
One of the most important things, though, that the RPC does is it's there's only one federally designated metropolitan planning organization for transportation. So all of the planning, we don't have control over all of the budget numbers. Like, for example, we don't control the federal roads. We don't have any say in the priorities of the airport. But for almost every other federally funded and state funded transportation project, the Metropolitan Planning Organization part of the RPC is very important to transportation planning and funding of projects. And so we spend an awful lot of time on that. And there's really an organization within the organization. And back when I was chair of the MPO back in the late 2000s, we actually began the initiation of the merger between the RPC and the MPO, which was completed in 2011. They separated sometime during the 60s. And for some reason, we had to endure that, for quite some period of time. And we finally got them back together in 2011. And so that's very important to the town to understand what the federal and state transportation funding priorities are and how they fit into doing the projects, including things, paths. If you've driven on Route 117, you saw the repairs that were done over the Alderbrook. You see things like we're slated to have an improvement project there, Route 117 and North Williston Road, in the next couple of years as part of the Circle Alternatives process, which I was a part of. And when we lost AB of the Cirque and then the links to Colchester, there was a whole planning process that was done back in 2013, 2014 time period where we identified a whole bunch of projects to help deal with the fact that we weren't going to have the transportation benefits of the Cirque.
Which the Crescent Connector is one of those projects. It was identified as the #1 project,
Right.
which was supported by CCRPC and the other regional partners, and is now slated for construction.
Right, and there's a whole bunch of other projects that are out there with construction timing to be determined based on fund availability, and that's where we in Chittenden County, even though we're a metropolitan planning organization, we still compete with other counties around the state for the state funds portion of the federal funding that goes with it that we sometimes locally match, and so it's one of those things where people that represent the community on the RPC board are very integrally involved with the transportation planning and transportation funding of all the projects that are important to us in the community. So it really behooves the select board and the town staff to be right on top of all those transportation issues because they're crucial and they're really important. And one of the things that we're doing now at the RPC as part of the MPO planning process is we're planning the future of our federal aid highway that goes through here called the interstate. And there's a very significant project going on right now that's going to be very important to defining the transportation future of the entire county, including our community.
Yeah, thank you both, Jeff and Evan and Greg. I'll get back to the report and just to kind of follow up, the next section on page 3 is the projects that the town has in our transportation improvement program, which really mirrors what VTrans has in the capital program that the legislature approves each year. And you can see you have a good number of projects that I think, credit to the staff there. And as Jeff noted, some of these are follow-up from the CERC alternatives process that are still moving forward. I don't know the details of every single project that is here expected to be funded, but do let me know if there's any of these projects that you'd like me to follow up on to get any more information or detail on. Happy to do that. So I'll pause there. Any questions on any of those projects?
I have a question on, are you specifically on page 3? I'm on page 5. The building.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was on page 3 to 4 on the third section. I'll get there in one moment if you don't mind holding that.
No.
That's the regional issues that we work on, not the individual community issues.
Yeah.
Although there are ramifications for the community.
Yeah. The next section is just a couple projects that we have in this fiscal year that we're working with the town on. The 15 corridor pedestrian and also the stormwater inspection work. So that's continuing. And then I'll jump into these regional activities. Obviously, we do that without regard to any specific town, as Jeff just mentioned. A couple of those I want to mention before getting to the building homes together. One is that we do a legislative forum every early December. If you have some issues that you think we ought to address with the legislature, we usually get a good number of our legislators, both representatives and senators there. So if there's something that you would like us to consider, including in what we talk about with them, please let Evan know or Jeff know or me know, and happy to put that into the mix. The next topic is just the public engagement and racial equity. And this is really just to let you know that we are trying to do some racial equity work internally as an organization, but also keeping an eye out for what can we do that might be helpful to our town, our member towns. So we did have some communication, some conversations with each of our towns to get a sense of what's going on there. And so all that's kind of getting cooked up right now, and we're holding an equity summit on Saturday, November 6th, which is not in the report, but just heads up to let you know. I'm hoping that you all got invites for that maybe. Let me know if you did not see anything about that.
I haven't.
I haven't, no.
Okay, all right, that sounds like all of you saying you have not seen that.
I think Patrick, you said you have seen it?
Yeah, I mean,
But you may have
I have to
gotten it
check my
indirectly
email,
from
but
another-
I think I
yeah.
saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have got it from Emma Vaughn.
Sounds right. Yeah, but
Yeah. And it's a possible it ended up in your spam folder because it comes through constant contact. So, but I'll resend that to the whole select board. And I'm sorry. Okay, I will do that. And then I wanted to talk about the Building Homes Together campaign. We set out a goal 5 years ago, along with Champlain Housing Trust and Housing Vermont, which is now Evernorth, to try to build 3,500 homes in Chittenden County, hoping that that would help our housing market. We did build over 3,600 homes. And we also built over 500, I say we as a broad community, built over 500 affordable units, permanently affordable units. However, the task is nowhere near done. COVID did not help. There's still a lot more to do in terms of getting to a healthy housing market. The vacancy rate for rentals is still very low. Housing prices have gone up, which is great if you're a seller, but not great if you're a buyer. I think it's we're really seeing it as it's really an economic development issue. It's constraining our ability to grow the economy at Chittenden County, as we hear every week from employers that are trying to bring new employees into town and they can't find any place to live. And so it is a real issue that's impacting us in a variety of ways, and also homeless issues and other things, and mental health is certainly a factor at that end of the market. But I'm sorry, there was a question about the Building Homes Together?
No, I just was hoping you could go into a little more detail like you did, so that's fine.
Yeah, and if you have some thoughts about what would be helpful in terms of addressing our housing market, at some level, at a simplistic level, we just need more supply, but there's more nuance to it than that. Our towns, including Essex, I think, have all been doing good work to try to address that, looking at your zoning and doing things like that. And so if you have other thoughts about, state policy, municipal policy, funding, there's a lot more funding thanks to the federal government for affordable housing and to address the homeless issue. And so I don't think that will be the focus of this next campaign, but there's certainly, we all need to do more to try to address our housing market. And happy to take any feedback.
So is it a regional project or program? Do you have data at the community level? Is it only that?
So what we do at the municipal level, and sorry, I'm dipping back into the report here where I can't see you, is we've been holding what we've been calling regional housing convenings. And we get the housing committees together and really partly to share best practices across the towns and learn from each other and kind of say, oh, how did that go for you? What did you learn? So that hopefully we're incrementally, all the towns are learning from each other and getting better about this issue. And I'm sorry, I can't remember somebody from Essex. I'm sure somebody from Essex has been engaged there.
Probably either Darren Scheibler or Oisa Makuku.
Yeah, definitely Darren has been plugged into it. Thanks. Yeah, any other feedback for me on, there's a lot more in there I did not read, but any other feedback or reactions or comments for us?
I have a question. It does dip into the housing thing a bit. Have you heard anything statewide or anything that locally smaller communities may have done that might impact the short-term housing, like the Airbnb rentals? Because what colloquially or anecdotally, excuse me, I should say, I've seen is that a lot of the housing markets are being driven up by either individuals or larger companies that will buy them and then effectively just do short-term rentals because, the profit is there. It's happened to a house on my street in the last year. It's just kind of a rotating cast of people in and out there. Obviously we can't tell people you can't buy a house, but I have seen, some articles about putting in some sort of, whether it's like a vacancy tax or something along those lines. Have you guys been tracking that at all around the state? Just get an idea for it.
Yeah, a little bit, and you know, you kind of, and then you hear the other side, you know, if it's not a corporate buyer, that you're right, that's a whole different thing. But, you know, sometimes there's also the homeowner who's, you know, being able to do Airbnb is helping them stay in their home, you know, as a retiree or something. So, but there's definitely conversations going on in some different municipalities and in the state house about how to regulate that issue. So I do think that is going to get some more discussion, certainly in this legislative session, and it is part of this equation. You know, we had you know, people from out of state buying second homes here, which took up you know, some segment of the housing market. And I think the Airbnb issue is it is part of the issue too. And I don't know, Jeff, I don't know from your perspective if you've seen more on that topic or not.
I've seen a lot. It's turned the supply on its ear, because a lot of them, you know, whether it's Airbnb, HomeAway, or any of the other folks that have been involved, the activity has exploded statewide. A lot of it's happened around resort areas, in particular, but also in neighborhoods where the residential certainly is competing for supply. A lot of times when we do affordable housing, we forget about something that's very important, which is if we make the middle of the price range work well, it allows people that are living in houses that are well within their affordability range. I'm an empty nest couple, and we live in a 4-bedroom house. And we could afford more house than what we're in, but we choose to stay in a house that is well within our affordability range. But if you gave people choices in the middle, a lot of times that can free up units for people that are moving into first-time home buyer things, and people can move up if they have something that they would like to move in to. And it's, I think in the housing report that originally launched this, it was called the Forgotten Middle.
Yep.
We spend so much time on the low end, and then we spend other parts of our thing lamenting the upper end, that we forget about the middle. And it's about not just providing supply, it's also about making markets work correctly. And so, you know, a lot of times when we do things on the supply side, we're making 100-year decisions about where they're going to be located and those kinds of things. And we don't properly sometimes take account of the demand side of the equation, which is a lot of times why you'll hear economists say, like me, that if you just give people the capability with vouchers and everything to make their own decisions about where they live and just make it more affordable because you're increasing their purchasing power to either rent or own, a lot of times you help the market correct itself. We're also going through a very difficult period now where COVID is impacting things. And the question is, it is probably altering market preferences among people. We just don't know how it's going to end up in the end after things settle down, like when the economy starts operating on its economic fundamentals rather than deficit spending dollars from the federal government falling out of the sky into people's bank accounts. So we're going to have a real interesting time with housing markets over the next 5 years, particularly as we get past this unprecedented period of the federal fiscal stimulus and the federal monetary stimulus that's kept interest rates really low, which has done a lot to increase the asset prices of the housing units, which has exacerbated the affordability issues on the demand side. So I don't envy the RPC's work, but I will tell you one thing, that the RPC is consciously tried to avoid establishing municipal targets for affordable housing. If you recall, we did that back in the 80s, and that went over with our member communities like a lead balloon.
Yeah, I think that was 2004 actually, but it was a little,
in the 80s.
No, it was a little bit before I got here, because 4 or 5 years later, I was still getting feedback about it. So it was one of those first things I heard when I got here.
40 years, that just blends in, Charlie.
But and I do yeah, and those are all good points. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah. So any more feedback for me, for us? Questions?
Yeah, Charlie, one of the things that we hear from our residents about is access to childcare. I know that's kind of a regional issue also. I don't know if there's any, I know it's not one of your specific things today, but is there any discussion about, you know, I know the hospital's doing their 3-year community needs assessments effort right now, and
Health needs assessment.
your scorecard, the ECO scorecard doesn't mention anything about. I guess there's two things. There's the child care access, and the other is mental health access.
Yeah.
Things that are anywhere on your radar.
Yeah, Jeff kind of covered, and Evan did too, on the mental health. I think, a big part of that push was really the community outreach program. And we kind of facilitated the beginning of that. That is now, it's a new service that seems to be going great in the suburban town. So thank you for participating in that. On the daycare side, it's much more of a state issue in terms of their regulations. And I understand that I think I saw recently they're putting $29-30 million into supporting daycare providers. So it's much more of a state issue. We try to kind of support where that's going. It is an issue out there for sure. And we've also, if there have been specific efforts, sometimes a town or a group has gotten together to try to form a daycare or build a daycare. I'm actually talking to the group at Hula. I don't know if you're familiar with them and the old Blodgett site. They're looking to do a daycare. We're probably going to help support some grant applications to try to help them do that. So, if that kind of thing is coming along, we're happy to support those. And we do try to pay attention to that issue because that's also definitely impacting our community. And thankfully, I think the state did a good job supporting the daycare centers through the pandemic. We didn't have as nearly as negative an impact here as other states did. With
65 providers. I'm saying that facetiously. If I'd had my mask off, you would have seen I had my tongue in my cheek. Thank goodness for COVID funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Andy, I think you might have had another question or two, or was that it?
Well, my other question is you I didn't realize you were asking us to go page by page here, but back on page 3 at the bottom of one of the earlier sections, there was a question about, or there was a comment about meeting with Essex staff to discuss our senior van program. And is the intent there an expansion of our program, or is it a separate entity, or what's the discussion there?
I would say the discussion is very early. I think the more rural towns were trying to understand how you were providing that service and wondering if they could replicate it or expand it, into their towns. But nothing too serious, I think, has happened there yet. So I think we're just kind of letting you know that that was a discussion out there, but nothing firm has come out of that yet.
Okay, all right.
Leave no good idea unstolen.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah, that's right. Or what did somebody, I heard it phrase today, R&D is rip it off and duplicate it. So anyway, but which means, just trying to steal good ideas from other people. So I think they're, impressed a little bit with what Essex has done with regard to your service there.
If you got any ideas on how to find bus drivers.
Yeah. And honestly, there's a bigger issue there too.
Yeah.
Just in terms of local property taxes, and I'm sure you're more familiar with this than I am, having to support, GMT and SSTA and whatever else you do on top of that for transportation needs in the community. We are partnering right now with GMT and VTrans to look at transit financing options that could take the burden off of property taxes locally. And so I'm hoping that goes somewhere. It's not the first time that issue's been looked at, but I don't know, maybe this is the right time for that issue to get addressed. And that would really help the towns and frankly help the public. We don't have the most functional system, certainly with regard to the elderly and disabled system.
Right. And my other question is, where the village is voting very soon on a question whether to separate. Is there any implications with regard to our relationship to you, or
Not really that I can think of. I do think a number of years ago, we used to have, and certainly before our merger, so this goes back maybe 10 years, the dues payment was separated out a little bit more. I think it's gotten combined over the last number of years. But that's, that's pretty easy math. It's just based on the grand list. And so that's really the only implication. I mean, I think we've been working with both the village and the town, as, whether we're talking about your zoning bylaws, your town plans, those have been separate activities. Public Works, I don't know. I do not see any issue, I guess, to answer that question directly.
Right.
For Metropolitan Planning Organization votes, the town has 2 votes.
Right.
Because it has one in the village from the village rep and one for the town outside the village, which is me. So the town of Essex will no longer have 2 weighted votes for MPO. Burlington has 4. South Burlington has 2.
That's right, and Colchester, yep.
And Colchester has 2, and we have 2. But we will have 1 if we separate.
And I will say, Jeff, you have more history on this than I do, but I think there was only 1 vote in the whole history of the MPO that even came down to a weighted vote, and that was around the CIRC probably 20 years ago or something, right?
Well, that's why I'm the second alternate for the village as well, even though I live in the town outside the village.
Yeah. So
there's probably 3 or 4 meetings a year where I represent both the town and outside the village and the village in voting.
Yeah. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for your time. And anything to follow up, please do. I appreciate it.
Any other questions from board members?
No.
To make sure we're
public.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, I have one issue, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I have to tell you that I'm not going to be a town of Essex resident for much longer.
Oh.
And my wife and I started building a house in the town of Shelburne with a late February, early March type of supply chain notwithstanding.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the point in time when I'm moving out of the town, I feel like I have to step down from my position as the CCRPC rep, and also I'm a Tri-Town commissioner as well in the Tri-Town wastewater treatment plant thing. So I serve at the pleasure of the board. If you want me to step down now, I will be glad to do that. I've had conversations with Tracy, and I think she would like to continue to integrate herself into it, and I'm happy to continue to represent the town until I actually move. But I think after that, it behooves me to step down. I don't think you want your representative living in another town. But I'm always available. I have some institutional memory since I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've lived in the town for almost 30 years.
You are
on the Economic Development Commission, when I first came to town. So I love the town, but it's just, I'm over 65 and it's a time in my life where I need to take on a new stage and things, and I love what I've done with the RPC and my 10 years on the select board. Although when I sit here tonight, you're talking about the same issues we talked about 15 to 20 years ago when I looked at the agenda, except for noise ordinance. I don't think we ever did noise ordinances. What we did, doggies, and one of the worst parts of my job was when we had dog bite complaints. I hated it. And people used to say to me, "Why do you have to euthanize dogs?" And I used to say, "Because we can't euthanize the owner." So it's just, it's been a pleasure. And I regret I won't be able to serve out the remainder of my 21-22 term. But like I said, I'm always available for anybody. Before COVID, I used to tell people I've seen it all. But even as I've been at this for 40 years, I realize that there's still new twists and there's still new turns and everything. And I very much appreciate the board keeping me on so I could keep my hand in things that are important. I tell my wife democracy is not a spectator sport, and it allowed me, even after I left elected office back in 2010, to continue to serve the community. And I always appreciated the opportunity to do that. Now you're embarrassing. It's a good thing I have my mask on.
Sorry, Jeff. I have to share my favorite memory of Jeff, though. On the BCA, we didn't have a quorum one night, and so we were on the phone trying to call people to come to the BCA meeting, and Jeff was painting. And Jeff came covered in paint, carrying a paintbrush, just so he could vote that night at the BCA. That's the kind of awesome person that he is.
So does anybody want to boot him out now, or should we let him finish?
No,
his-
I would prefer he stays until he, he won't.
And
no
with the
longer.
light
Larry,
thing, who
last
knows?
night.
I could be,
Because
I could be there
Your
for
house
the whole
might not
year.
gonna be up- built before your term ends.
I understand.
That's true. That's yeah.
We'll make sure of it.
We'll see if we can.
And I'll miss
Someone's gonna
Charlie and the
live in
staff.
Parkies
I
in the
mean,
lake. Yep.
you
Delivery trucks going.
You just need to understand the quality of the staff at the RPC and their knowledge of transportation issues, the energy planning issues, and all the things that are out there. We would not be as good as we are. We would not be the economic engine of the state that we are in Chittenden County without organizations like that supporting us.
Appreciate that, Jeff. Thanks.
And with that, I bid you adieu. It's my last annual update for you.
Right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie.
Well done, Jeff.
You never know. Thanks, Jeff.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Have
Right.
fun.
Yep. Thanks.
Have a good night. Thanks.
Okay, so the next business item is discussion and potential action on open meeting law training from Vermont League of Cities and Towns. As you likely recall, we had a request a while back to have the Secretary of State come and give us some training. And I think, Evan, you know the most of the details about the interaction with the Secretary of State.
We finally did get a hold of the Secretary of State, and they said they don't do individual towns. They will do presentations for multiple things. So we turned our attention to the VLCT, Vermont League of Cities and Towns. Staff did, and we can get some dates where they're able to do it. But Greg was the one who took the last part of it. There is one thing that they stated is they will certainly do the training, but they are not going to take questions from the public. It's just going to be a presentation. If there are questions, they will, from the select board, they'll take them and get back to you, but they're not going to be able to take questions from the public.
It's training. That's fine. It's
training,
not an open
no.
public. Yeah.
But we certainly appreciate that they will do it. For those who are in the audience, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns is just like the CCRPC before them. They are a wealth of resources. They have several attorneys on staff. When towns have a legal question, maybe it's something in a state statute or how the state is applying something, we are or many other things about COVID or employment law. If it's something that they have touched before, they will usually give you an opinion of what you should do or where you can look. So this is as good as anything of the state Secretary of State's office. And they do this training all the time.
So Sue, you had a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was a little confused though by the response from the VLCT that they pointed the public to the Secretary of State's office. And I don't, the Secretary of State's office is saying that they won't meet with the public on it.
They'll answer individual questions. They just don't want to have a group meeting where that Jim comes to talk to the group. But his staff will answer individual questions when you call them.
So do we know if any other municipalities or communities have successfully had training or public forums on?
So periodically, the Secretary of State's office will do a what do they call it, a tour. Sorry, what? Transparency tour. Yes, and they will set up regional meetings where they'll go through it and then they'll do this kind of discussion. I think fairly recently because there's been some places that have had embezzlement done in their towns. They've gone around and they've talked about controls around that but it's a regional thing. Again, they don't go to specific towns to do it.
And do we know, is there any transparency for plans in the near future?
Was there a comment in that about that in the memo? I think it just said we would watch out for the next one. I don't know if it said that there was any. I think it just said we don't know. I don't know if there's a.
I don't see anything about that in here.
What was the original request for the public to have an opportunity to have training?
Yeah, that's why we need to have this discussion. Is do we want to have this training? Because we could go. I mean, I've if you've gone to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Town Fair, they often will have this topic. I've attended it a couple times. In fact, I repeated it. In fact, they offer it after every town meeting for new board members. And so when I became chair, I repeated it just this year just to have it fresher in my mind. And I think Tracy, you took it this year as well. So it is offered annually to any board member can take it. And I don't know if it's open to the public or not. Just anybody can sign up for it. I don't know. Probably not.
Probably not.
Because their response pretty much said that we serve our members, and our members are the municipalities, meaning the people that are either employed by or elected to. And so they're not a resource for the general public, and they don't want to give legal advice to the general public about open meeting, or any other questions.
I think that's the difference. The VLCT is a member-driven organization of municipalities. The Secretary of State is just that, the Secretary for the state. So if you have questions about a state statute, you can ask the Secretary of State as a resident or a business.
Right. So the question before us, there's a couple of things we could consider. We could have a public meeting where the training video is shown, and then we ask questions of their lawyer, and only we get to ask those questions if we have any. Or we can each individually watch the video and then have a public discussion about it afterwards. Or we can just decide it's not really what was asked for, and refer those who requested the discussion to go to the Secretary of State's office, or continue to watch for the next transparency tour if it's offered, and then publicize that in our locally. So I don't know what folks think about that, because as I said, Tracy and I have taken the open meeting law training this year. We would have to pay for the training to watch, for us to even just the five of us to watch the video. It's not a free service. Or in March or April, actually April after, or in March, April, right after town meeting has happened, they offer it every year for new or existing members. So I don't know what. I mean, question, I guess, does it satisfy the need that drove us to get to this question, asking this question?
I don't know, but Greg's hand is up in case he has some input.
Greg, you want to say something? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, most of what I was going to say has been covered, but I just add, VLCT told us that there's nothing to prevent residents from sending questions to board members ahead of time if this meeting is scheduled, and board members could ask that. But yeah, like Evan said, the reason that they want to respond only board questions is because they serve the board, not all the public.
Right. Yeah, true. So we could relay the questions, and hope we catch the correct nuance, but then there's not really a mechanism for follow-up questions, because I don't think we want to be have an online chat going with people during a meeting. So no, what do folks think?
how we got in this mess in the first place.
Exactly.
I mean, I didn't think this was a good idea to start with. I mean, now the Secretary of State isn't coming, and if the only option would be for the 5 of us to watch a video and then ask some VLCT questions, maybe members of the public could send them in, but it seems like they could just talk to the Secretary of State at that point, which is what was recommended. Specific questions relayed to us to get the VLCT, who, I mean, just go to the Secretary of State. I still do not believe that this is an efficient use of our time in any way whatsoever. This was suggested by a member of the public who brought it to the board, and then the board voted to reach out to the Secretary of State. I feel we've done our due diligence on that. And if the VLCT option seemed like it would satisfy the public with some sort of like open forum, which I really feel is more what people were looking for, then, you know, I could be swayed. But in this case, it doesn't sound anything like what the members of the public brought to us. And I don't really think that it's a high priority for us. We all know how the open meeting law works, and when there's been an instance where it was unclear, we'd reach out for advice. And the instance where this came up, where Elaine and I were talking online, was a situation where we were doing online meetings with COVID, and, you know, it was one instance that got cleared up, and public request was submitted, and all documentation was turned over. So it seems to me that we have followed open meeting law almost every step of the way. I don't really see that the 5 of us need to watch a video to understand that.
Thanks, Pat. Any other thoughts?
I guess my thought is the request was specifically for the Secretary of State to come and have more of an open forum. As you mentioned earlier, VLCT offers this training every single year. It's going to be available in 6 months' time. So I'm not convinced that this meets the need of what was asked for.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But I do think that we should be paying attention to when the next transparency tour happens and take advantage of that.
Okay, Sue, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with what Tracy
Yeah.
said, and I remember taking the training back. I'm sure they make updates every year,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, I think it probably is in each of our best interest to take the training and refresh, because like I said, it probably does go through some transitions, but I don't think it was the intention of the request. I wasn't here when the request was made, but my understanding is that it was a desire for a public forum that the public could
Okay, thanks, Sue. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I do agree with that. It's not just kind of, I do agree with what's been said. It doesn't seem to meet what we were asked for. But I see at least one hand up in the public. So, oh, it's trying to get me back to the meeting. Okay, with going to the public for, so Betsy Dunn? Did you want to comment, Betsy?
My hand's not up, Andy. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Must be I've got some lagging here. Can anybody see any hands up?
Bruce Post.
Bruce.
Bruce. Now I'm seeing Bruce. Go ahead.
Hi, Bruce Post, 1 Cindy Lane for the record. You know, I agree that this really doesn't meet the spirit. I think Betsy and I brought the issue based on that March 26th meeting where we alleged that there was an illegal side meeting going on involving 3 members of the select board. We felt it was important to have a conversation about these issues because there are people the public didn't think it was fair to even submit a request for public information about what went on. And Vermont has a relatively weak open meeting law, and the primary enforcers of the law are citizens who have to incur expenditures to go to court to bring a case against a potential offending municipality. So I think it was public education. Perhaps most of the public's not interested in it. I thought at the time it was a good idea. Frankly, I don't think you ought to waste money getting select board training on this. And I understand fully the VLCT serves its members, and the VLCT is not particularly a friend of open meeting laws and transparency. The Secretary of State is. The Secretary of State said they wouldn't meet with an individual town. So I guess it falls to us citizens to try to make sure that there is some transparency in our local government. And we tell you when we think you're not being transparent. So I don't think you should spend the money either.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for your comments. Any other comments? Go ahead.
I don't understand necessarily the comment that VLCT is not I don't know what the VLCT stance on open meetings is. They do training, they know the law. I have no idea if they're against it or for it, but I don't know if that comment is appropriate I just don't know. So it just struck me, every time we've asked them about the law, they interpret the law as they know it and they see it, and they do it throughout the state. So that's all, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks, Evan. Any comments in the room? Only one person in the room. No. Okay. All right. I don't see any other online. Are there other hands? Sorry, what?
Somebody has their hand back up.
That's still Bruce.
Bruce does.
Yeah, he took his hand down, he put it back up.
So I guess he's probably asking to rebut what Evan just said. So
Hello, I'm here. The VLCT has put they lobby the legislature. They're not particularly aggressive in terms of making the open meeting law a citizen-friendly law. One of the things they put in a few years ago was enabling select boards to cure potential violations of the open meeting law. And we saw that happen here in Essex when an agenda went out on a very important issue, an agenda went out and a very important issue was not listed on the agenda. The board met on it, and then later on, at a subsequent meeting, cured it by adding it to the previous agenda, but the public who might have been interested in that issue was not able to participate because they didn't know ahead of time. So that's the kind of stuff that weakens an already weak law. And as a select board member and as someone who's been an observer in the legislature, I've never seen VLCT being in the forefront of supporting transparency. So that's certainly an appropriate comment. So there you go.
thank you, Bruce. All right. Okay, I don't see any other online hands. Anybody else see any? In case I'm out of sync here. So no. Okay. All right. So it sounds like the consensus is, well, yeah, we all agreed that it's inappropriate to go forward with that. So we can take that off the table, and we'll again watch out for the Secretary of State offerings if they come in the future. Okay, moving on to the next business item, discussion and potential action on tentative agreements about shared services between Town of Essex and Independent City of Essex Junction. It appears now we've got 3 different versions of those documents potentially to look at. What do we want to do? Does it make sense to look at versions that we have not yet seen, or that potentially are back level? What do you want?
I guess that was my question is, can we be sent the absolute latest version so we're all on the same page? Because reading through tonight's agenda, tomorrow's agenda, there's a working copy out there. I got very confused as far as what we should actually be talking about. So I guess I would like to suggest that we could be sent that tomorrow, first thing in the morning, or Greg, if you have it tonight, so that we can have a discussion on the actual good working copy tomorrow night at the joint meeting.
One thing I'd like to consider too is there were 9 documents in the packet. Could we work on 2 or 3 of them at a time instead of trying to, have every packet full of every agreement, and then, I
But some of them we'd already worked on, and I thought they were
right. I think some of them, right, we should mark as
ready to go.
either complete or mostly complete, and not keep including them.
Right.
And maybe we need to, for those, we need to actually state that we're done with it, at least
Those
for
are the ones
now.
that shouldn't they go to the trustees if we're done? Is not what I thought? See, I thought that's what we were going to discuss tomorrow night. Are the ones that we were ready to? What we were,
Yeah, I don't know. The problem that I have right now is I don't know where we are with any of them, because it's confusing. The fact that
Good, I thought it was just me, so.
we've now got 3 sets, and I think, I don't view that we really have any urgency to do these very, I mean, the vote's going to happen regardless of whether, where we are with these agreements. Yes, we'd like to get them behind us, but not at the expense of missing something, or,
so then what is the? So then we'll, other than interviewing tomorrow night, we are also on the agenda was to discuss this with the trustees. But
right.
what are you proposing we're going to be discussing?
I don't know. That's really hard, because we just got, we just before this meeting supposedly got new updates, or they were, right, Greg, new documents came late this afternoon.
Yeah, so what happened is excuse me, the documents in your packet and in the packet for tomorrow night are the trustees' latest comments. It does not include the edits and the comments that the select board made through Bill Ellis. Those have come in from Bill over the weekend. Not his fault on the delay. So Brad Luck has taken those, and as of tonight has combined the trustee comments and the select board comments into one document. So to Tracy's question, yes, I'm happy to send that out tonight. I think tomorrow the discussion between the 2 boards is to go through as many of the documents as you're willing to, and talk about some of those outstanding issues. As far as I can remember and tell, there have not been any documents that have been finalized at this point. You're getting close on some of them, but nothing has been totally wrapped up. So tomorrow's another chance to talk about what's out there and different sides and opinions and perspectives that both boards have on the documents.
Yes, you may.
Right, when these are, changes are coming from different sources, is that tracked, are those changes tracked in that way on the documents? I know I saw like things crossed out and different words put in, but is there any tracking, like of when that change was made and who made it?
Yes and no. There's been so many changes over the past few months that we don't have everything in one document, but it's just kind of worked out where when the boards get pretty close to something, they get a clean copy and then it goes back out. So it's kind of track changes, kind of 1 or 2 meetings at a time. But we have to go through the whole history and find everything that's been discussed to really see exactly what changes were made when by who. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think.
I agree with what you said, Andy.
Yeah.
I think that we've created a confusing situation. None of us really have any clarity into what are the current documents. We're getting updates too short in advance to be able to discuss them. And so in order for us to have a reasonable discussion, I think there needs to be some time given for us to assess and make our own comments back.
Go, Tracy.
Well, and it would, going forward, it would also be extremely helpful because of the track change issue and losing that, to have a separate, not necessarily a separate document, but not just to get a track change version back, but an actual listing of the rationale behind those requested changes. Because right now it's, I mean, it's great that we get a track change version back, but we have no idea why that's being requested, what the, you know, the, why. Why was one word changed? Why was one sentence changed? It would just help us to all understand and be on the same page.
I think a lot of that comes from our discussion though, and yeah, unfortunately, right, then you end up though with understanding of the progress of the document being institutional knowledge and not documented anywhere. You're right, but that's a lot of work, but
Well, and it's also, I mean, if you have a track change document in the packet and we read those track changes, we have no idea what the onus is behind those. So we're at the mercy of waiting in order to have
I
a
see.
conversation. We can't think through that rationale
Gotcha. Okay.
in advance of the meeting. So it becomes
Right,
a
right.
preparation issue, at
Okay.
least for me.
Right. So if the trustees request a change, right, we don't know why they requested that change until we sit in a room with them and have a conversation about it. Right. That's true. That is true.
Versus it being part of a comment box or something that it is attached to the to this version. Why did you make, usually you would say, or you could say, this is why I've made the change, or this was the issue. And it would either be in a comment box in the document or a cover memo to what you're getting. I did the same thing today, sorry, Sue, in a review of an RFP. You see it, you make a comment, you tell them why you're making the comment, and they then answer, a staff member answers the comment. Oh, this is how it, I put in a comment, something like, per state requirements. The comment came back, the state doesn't require any of that. It's just what you want done. And so at least I understood that my comment wasn't going to get changed, but understood. This is part of the problem because you're not doing this together, mostly in the same room.
Can I also ask, I'm not sure I quite understand Brad Luck's role, because he's not a trustee. And so this is coming from the trustees, this is coming from a staff member of the Essex Selectboard.
So they're using Brad as their clearinghouse for all this stuff. It's their decision. It's nothing we have not chosen to challenge that. Yeah, maybe we haven't discussed that either, but early on, and he was named as their point person for all things separation. I don't know if that's the right term to use, and I don't want to give him any abilities that he hasn't been officially granted by the trustees, but that's.
But then we're discussing with the trustees.
Yeah, and we have our legal counsel helping us do that, and our legal counsel is doing our edits for us. Whereas I think in their case, I don't know specific details of who's doing what.
Greg, Greg's hand was up. I didn't know if he had something to add first.
Go ahead, Greg.
Just going to say, yeah, Brad has been coordinating the efforts for the trustees. So he's sending out the changes that they discussed and that they want to have the select board review. So they are coming from the trustees.
I don't know. Does that answer your question?
They've also engaged their village attorney as the town has engaged its town attorney. And where they have asked, either side has asked for staff input, whether it's Brad or myself or anybody else they ask, they get input. So, but he is doing the coordinating for them because They have decided they'd put me in a bad position to have to do both. Sometimes they ask me for my opinion, I give it to them and give them direction and try to get to the emphasis of what the agreement could be and what to try to focus on versus not dwell on. Hope that helps.
Right, so it sounds like we don't want to talk about any of these agreements now because we're not sure which documents, we don't have the final documents to work with. The other question then is do we have Bill Ellis lined up to talk to us, to be available for executive session tonight? I didn't think so. So there's probably no reason to have any, we probably don't need to have any executive session about this topic either.
Your next one says discussion of personnel. Was there anything for that one?
Well, we can have our own discussion without Bill.
Okay, but I mean, as far as executive session, so you still want to go that way?
So we don't need to have an executive session to talk about the agreements because we aren't going to talk about those agreements tonight.
Okay.
Because we need to get to the correct documents. None of us have seen them. Well, correct. The most recent documents, we haven't seen them. We'll get them tonight, and I understand that some of us are working tomorrow. I am. Others are. So we may have some challenge tomorrow too to get to do a complete review. Fortunately or unfortunately, we have another joint meeting next Monday. So it may unfortunately I was hoping we could cancel that second one, but maybe we can't. And it's the work to be done. We should do the work. So
But,
sorry.
with our input to the timeline, I think that's.
Yeah. Okay. So any other discussion on this topic? Any reason they think we should go to the public comments on this? I see a couple of hands.
Go ahead.
Irene, you want to come to the microphone?
Thank you. I've held my tongue on other things tonight. Given Brad's role for the village, I think it would be highly appropriate for the select board to have their own consultant. Pick someone from the town outside the village who's knowledgeable and invite them to peruse these agreements just the way Brad has helped out his side of the town. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bruce, I see your hand up. Or is that left holdover from before?
Bruce's hand isn't up. I made a note that I've been in some Microsoft meetings lately, and this has been a problem in those meetings where some hands show up when to the rest of us, there is no hand. And then to you, it looks like there is. And I do see though, from where I'm sitting, that Betsy Dunn has her hand up, but Bruce doesn't. Thanks.
Yes, Betsy's the next one on my list. I was going to go there next. Thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
My apologies for the way Microsoft Teams is working this evening.
Not your problem.
Trouble.
But thank you.
Go ahead, Betsy.
Thank you, Andy. So that you haven't been able to talk about these MOUs or the tentative agreement on each of these particular ones that you have to work with the trustees, maybe you should take the time and get the actual document from them as a negotiator for the nurses' contracts. When we would get a article from them, they would explain it, and then we would separate totally so that we could sit and talk about what this actually means amongst ourselves, instead of each of you picking it apart in front of them. So don't meet tomorrow, get the actual thing, and then the next Monday, meet with them. So there is only one actual next meeting that you have with them. It would be a way of you all coming together with your response to what they're putting out there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Betsy. I guess to clarify, some of the changes that will be discussed tomorrow are changes that we requested and we're looking for their reaction. So this is, yeah, we are, this does go on a two-way street. And so there are often times when we see something new from the trustees and we say, well, we need to have our own private discussion about that before we respond. And so that's part of, why this is taking time to get through. But thank you for your comments.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other hands? Sorry, I still see Bruce's hand, but I won't call on him. All right. Okay. So that is that. Then we'll hopefully have a fruitful discussion tomorrow about that. The next item on the agenda is discussion of personnel. We'll go into executive session later to have that discussion, and we'll that'll be that. Okay. Then we move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pat. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to reading file. Any board member comments?
I do have one minor addition for you. You mentioned bus drivers. This last week and a half, 2 weeks, we hired 2 new senior van drivers.
Oh, hey, great.
And they are starting, I believe, this week or next at the worst. So we have gotten lucky and found 2 drivers.
Good.
So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right, thanks. One thing I want to mention is there's the list of committees and commission vacancies. Tomorrow we're interviewing 4 people for 1 seat on the Housing Commission. One of the candidates is a close personal friend of mine, so I'm going to recuse myself from the interviews and the decision. And so Pat's going to be the point person from our side. I'll be out of the room. Let you be aware of that ahead of time. I will at the time, tomorrow also state concern about the appearance of a potential conflict of interest and recuse myself. Anything else? All right, if not, then we need to go into, I need the motion to go into executive session for discussion of personnel.
I move that the select board enter into executive session to discuss the employment of a public employee in accordance with 1 GSA section 313A3 to include the town attorney, unified manager, and deputy manager.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Don. Thank you, Tracy. Any discussion? I guess we did include those 3 additional folks.
You can keep the motion, and if you
leave them
don't
in-
need us,
leave them in the
you'll-
motion.
right.
I can change. I just
No. Leave them in the motion. Then we can either tell them not, just ask them not to.
Step in, step out.
There's likely, I'm not aware that we would come back and take any action afterwards. So we will, when we end executive session, adjourn the meeting from there and not return to the we don't want to be taking any action. We will just
adjourn.
So thank you for everyone for attending. And did we vote?
No, not yet.
We didn't vote.
It's all right. I was waiting, Andy. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah. I'm glad I caught up on that. All right. So any further discussion?
Who's
I've said
seconded?
enough. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. We'll go upstairs for executive session and we won't come back. Thank you for everyone for attending.